Hi, I'm Noah Daniel, and I'm so excited that you're here with us today. From the beginning, the Mentoree was really created in response to express needs of educators to find support and to find each other. And so, over the past few years, we really did become the Mentoree from a community of mentorship. And we're here to cultivate this community in response to the people in it, and it's grounded in professional learning, well-being, and efficacy. I'm so excited to have what I hope is the first of an annual event, a mentorship story, where mentors and mentees in our community can share their mentorship experience and why it was reciprocal, non-hierarchical, and powerful for them. So this impact story is brought to you by the longest standing mentor and mentee relationship we have in our community. And I'm so excited to bring them in right now. Welcome to this conversation, Dr. Teri Rubinoff and Hoda Ahmed. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thrilled to be here.
So, when you guys first met, there must have been an impetus besides us coming and bringing this opportunity to you for why you connected. So, I would love to hear, Hoda, how did it begin for you?
It began for me, I think, on Twitter. I had seen some conversation about something happening, and it really piqued my interest because at the time I was a first-year teacher candidate at the Faculty of Education at the University of Ottawa. And when I reached out to the person who had shared some information on Twitter, they let me know that there was a process in terms of finding a mentor. And I found Teri, and what brought me to her was our shared interest in early years and special education. And those were two things that I was really passionate about and wanted to learn more about. So I sent her a message, an email, and I asked her if she would do the honors of being my mentor. And she replied yes. And that was way back in 2019, I believe late fall, possibly late winter, and we had connected in the new year. So no, it's actually 2018, late 2018. Then we connected in 2019, and our mentorship journey began then. There was, some formal pieces which were kind of more along the lines of guidance, and we just took it and turned it into something that worked for us. And I think Teri would say the same thing. It's been a pleasure and a real learning experience, and exceptionally supportive and responsive, because through those 4 years, almost five, so much has changed. And I don't think I would have wanted to do it without this opportunity.
I love that you're saying that. And before Teri tells a little bit about her story,
Yeah.
one of the things that I find compelling is something that you wanted. So often in education, we don't have a lot of say. We don't have a lot of say in what we do or who's in the room or how we learn, even, especially from pre-service through NTIP. So we really encourage people to find a mentor and cultivate that relationship before they need it. And it sounds like through the ebbs and flows from pre-service into the classroom, you have utilized that support on your own terms. Teri, how did you begin your conversations with Hoda?
Well, I had decided to join the Mentoree as a mentor at that stage of my career. I was just looking for new opportunities. It sounded like something that would be fun to do. I really don't think I could have anticipated how meaningful and supportive it has been for me in my own professional growth. And so I had filled out my profile, and as Hoda mentioned, she saw it, she reached out to me, and I was thrilled, and I thought, wow, this is great. And we have mentor and mentee kits to help guide mentors and mentees when they're starting out in this process. And so I actually referred to our mentor kit and thought, okay, I'm going to respond to Hoda. I just wanted to make sure I was thinking about all the things I needed to consider and provide her with the information that she needed in order for us to move things forward quickly and efficiently. So I got back to her and said, yes, I would be thrilled to meet up with her. And we worked out some of the logistics. We had to start off by deciding how we were going to meet, how frequently we were going to meet. And, because at the mentoring, those decisions are up to the mentor and the mentee once they connect to decide how they're going to structure their time together. So I can't remember. I don't think we've figured that all out in one email, but we decided to meet via Skype. We just wanted to meet using a platform where we could see each other. Hoda's in Ottawa and I'm in Toronto. And we had not met in person up until this past summer, but we'll save that for a little bit later in the story. So we wanted to be able to see each other when we connected. Our meetings naturally seemed to last an hour. We didn't really have that structure in place, but we just sort of noticed that that seemed to be a good amount of time for us. So we stuck with that. We decided to set up weekly meetings, and that way they'd be on the calendar. And if for either one of us that was a problem in any given week, we could adjust. But that way we knew we had that time set aside for us to meet on an ongoing basis. And that's where it started way back when.
Way back when. But a lot changes. And when you have a relationship that you've already established and you're going through all sorts of changes, hopefully it supports you in lots of different ways. But let's talk for a moment about professional learning. You know, there's a lot of mandated professional learning in pre-service, and then in NTIP, certain requirements by board. The new Teacher Induction Program is a beautiful experience, but not everybody goes from graduation to getting a job and going through NTIP. You have to be in a long-term occasional role for quite a long time, or you have to have a permanent contract. So there was that beat in between as well. How has, over this time that you guys been together, this relationship, this mentorship relationship, impacted your professional learning?
How do you want to start?
Yeah, in so many ways. I think, like you said, Noah, when you're in pre-service education or when you're first starting out, so much of what you're learning is about things that you're required to learn. And that piece is really helpful. But what I appreciated about our relationship is that I had a lot of questions that just came up and no real answers in the moment as to how do I learn more about this, or tell me more about this aspect of one thing. And Teri has been really helpful in sharing what she knows and also opening up our mentorship meetings to connect me with people who may have answers that she doesn't. So a few times now we've had people drop in and share their wonderful knowledge, whether it was about assessment, whether it was about literacy. They would come and we would both ask them questions. So I think our mentorship experience has positioned us both as learners. And one thing in particular that Teri had brought to me that I didn't learn about anywhere else was her self-reg journey. So she's kind of carried me along this journey with her. And I always tell people I'm learning about self-reg by osmosis, in that when Teri learns something, she'll share it with me. Our relationship in the beginning, when I was in the teaching a faculty, or the faculty of ed, was about that just-in-time learning. But we also were mentor-mentee during COVID, and that changed a lot. In that I wasn't in the classroom, and neither was Teri. And at one point, we took our professional learning journey step and started a 2-person book club. And we were interested in conversations about equity, about conversations that have to do with asking tough questions and not necessarily knowing where we're going with it. And I really appreciate that we have that space to do that and have that relationship where we don't have to know all the answers necessarily or be super scripted, and we have that flexibility.
I'm glad you said that. A lot of times, you know, definitions of mentorship is this person who knows something sharing into this empty vessel, somebody that doesn't know something. Mm-hmm. Not only have we kind of flipped the script on that at the Mentoree by creating spaces for those reciprocal relationships where everybody can learn from each other, but people can show up and not know and be themselves and share their vulnerability because they feel safe to do that. And I think that's a really powerful part of professional learning. And I love when I hear about your book clubs. You guys, how many books have you done now in your book clubs?
Is it 5?
I'm just looking to see what says and think about some of the books that we've read. I think it may be at least 5. We have, and it's interesting to think about the topics that we've covered, because we really do cover a range of things. And if I could, I'll step back and then come back to the book club again, it's interesting to think about. So when Hoda and I first connected, she was in the first year in the faculty and student teaching. And so, we would talk about whatever was most on her mind in the moment that we connected. And I think that that's an important piece too. Well, I think a lot of times or what can happen is that mentees or potential mentees might feel like they have to come into that relationship with a set of questions or goals that they've already determined for themselves, and that's really not the case. That might be a situation, especially for mentors who have been teaching for a while and there is something specific they want to learn, and so they seek out that relationship. But particularly when we're just starting out in this career, we may not know what all our questions are, and that's okay. And through the relationship between the mentor and the mentee, those things can be discussed and determined together in partnership. So that's something that can happen. And at the end of our first year together, Hoda's school year ended, and I think we both just naturally assumed that we were done. I don't remember ever really discussing it. We just kind of wrapped up. And then in August, I thought, maybe we should start again. So I reached out to Hoda and I asked her if she wanted to continue, and I didn't want her to feel any obligation. I thought also, her placement was changing. Maybe she wanted to reach out to someone else in our mentorship community, because that's an option as well. And she said yes, that she would continue with me. And so we continued again in that second year. And when the second school year ended for Hoda, we wanted to continue, and that's really what sparked our book clubs for two. And it's really been interesting because for the most part, they have been book clubs. We've chosen books that we wanted to read together that were new to both of us, so that we could jump into that learning and use it as a basis for conversation and discussion. And then we've had some interesting opportunities too. One of the book clubs, the book Flow, that we decided to read, it just so happened that another educational organization that I had a sort of peripheral connection to, I didn't even know this was happening. They were also doing a book club with the same book, and they invited us to join that book club. So together we joined that book club. There was another book club through the MEHRIT Center, self-reg focus, that we also joined together. So most times it was the two of us on our own, delving into different books, education related, on a variety of topics. But on occasion, we've actually together engaged in book clubs in larger contexts, which also gives us a chance to expand our thinking by hearing from other people as well. And as Hoda mentioned, one of the great things about having this mentorship relationship that sits within the larger mentoree community is that there are other people that we can reach out to and bring into our conversations depending on the topics. And that's a great way to extend our learning and build relationships and build our professional learning networks for both of us. So that's been really great.
That PLN point is so wonderful, because mentorship is not necessarily an end or even a means to an end. It is the beginning of so many things. And that network and those opportunities to connect with lots of people really should be something that mentorship helps to breed. And I love hearing all of this. Teri, is there anything else you want to add about how mentorship impacted your professional learning?
I do, actually. There's so much, there's been so much amazing learning for me. And as I said at the beginning, unexpected. I didn't really know what I was going to get out of this, but it's been really amazing that as I've delved into new opportunities, I've had Hoda as a resource to help me with my learning. So for example, when we first, I think it was when we were first starting out together, I was teaching university courses for the first time. And so that was new for me. And so being able to reflect with Hoda on what my plans were, on how I was responding to things, and get her perspective as a student who was in the faculty at that time was so helpful to me. And, we've gone in and out of that over time as I've taken on lots of new roles over the last few years, whether it's instructing an AQ course or writing an AQ course or teaching courses in the Faculty of Education. Having Hoda as a resource to get her perspective has been really invaluable and really I know we're going to get to the point of talking about mentorship for well-being, but I think it lends itself to that so much because, there's a lot of stressors involved in taking on new things. And so having somebody who you can talk through those things with, and that idea that we all have something to teach and we all have something to learn. And I think sometimes for new mentees, that can maybe feel a little daunting, thinking, well, what do I have to teach? But just by virtue of your lived experience, your perspective, where you are, I think also for some of us who've been teaching a long time, when we are fortunate enough to have a mentee who's just starting out, it helps to keep us current. It helps to keep us in the loop of what our new teachers wondering about, curious about, concerned about. And I think that we need to always know that and not lose touch with that. So it's just the tip of the iceberg of all the amazing things I learned from Hoda.
It's a good reminder of what new means. Some people are new to education, and having somebody who has been around can be really helpful. But also, that newness can bring so many interesting questions that can help drive your own questions and your own seeking of new learning. But I think too, like being new to different contexts, new roles within a school, new grades, each of them breed opportunities for learning. And the idea that your mentorship can be so flexible and so fluid and evolve so lovely. I do want to come to what you were alluding to, which was that well-being piece. They're not separate compartments when we talk about mentorship being to support professional learning, well-being, and efficacy. And I'm really interested in how your well-being has been impacted, especially because you did this through the pandemic, as a result of your mentorship relationship. So Hoda, why don't you start?
Well, I wanted to first co-sign on everything Teri just said. It has been, I think, the greatest, or this mentorship experience has had the greatest impact in terms of my well-being as an educator, in that I have somebody who's a trusted confidant who has a unique lens on the things that I'm going through or the questions that I have. We're not in the same space physically, but I know that there's a time set aside in the week where I can connect with Teri, bring any questions, debrief on anything that's happened, and have someone who's actively listening to me, who will hold space for me, who will ask great questions of me and help reframe a lot of the stressors that come from doing new things, from all the wondering, from being in a pandemic, from teaching and learning and trying all these things at the same time. I've found that this relationship has been one of the longest I've had, excluding the people I did the BEd with in terms of education. NTIP mentors do come and go, and as supportive as they are in terms of supporting you in understanding your board, the relationship I have with Teri is borderless. So we can connect and talk about whatever I have questions about, and she can give me her perspective. I can share mine with her, and together sometimes we come up with our own, and it has been so invaluable for me.
Oh, thank you. Teri, what about you in terms of well-being?
I'm just pausing because I'm thinking, as I know you both know, I've taken on a new role this fall, and in the summer, as I was gearing up for that, I was feeling a little overwhelmed. And so Hoda really was an excellent resource in helping me regulate and talk through and think through, how I was going to approach things. So I think there's, a down-regulating and an up-regulating component. Sometimes it's about, I don't know, sometimes I just think about some of the times where I'm really tired, my energy is low, and I'm thinking, oh, but we have this time booked, and then I come into the call and I feel like we energize each other. And then, we find that joy and we remember why we're doing this, and, we get excited about what we're doing again. And then by the time we get off the call, I feel so much really upregulated. I feel all this energy and it's so great. And other times where I might be a little bit more escalated myself, if I'm feeling stressed about things that are going on for me, then it becomes a very calming space. So it can work in both directions. And I think for both of us, and I think we take turns, right? I think we take, sometimes we come into that space, and I think it's about that awareness. I think that we both are really, because of all the learning that we've done about self-regulation, and we are both mindful and aware of the energy we're bringing into the space. And certainly as the mentor, I want to, leave my stuff at the metaphorical door in our virtual space and be focused on Hoda. And that isn't the goal, but I think it's also recognizing that we're both human and we both have different things that we're dealing with, and being able to share that space and take turns, in that role of the co-regulator, I think has been really valuable for both of us, I think.
It's funny because it makes me think of, like, when you were saying you were kind of dragging your feet into the meeting, that happens sometimes. Life happens and you're like, oh, I have something else to do. But then in the end, mentorship can walk alongside you at every phase. And you don't have to have that weekly meeting. You're not reporting to anybody. This is just for you. And it's just because you know that it helps you. It's because you build the relationship before you need it. And because the relationship is complicated and beautiful and does more than just make you a better teacher. We also know that well-being is essential for educators and something that can be easily threatened. So if you can build the relationship before you need it, like you're talking about, upregulating and co-regulating through that relationship, there's a lot of power that you're alluding to. But what about efficacy? Like, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and we learned about the power of collective efficacy, but what about that feeling, and how does mentorship then play a role in making you feel more efficacious about the work that you're doing? And either of you can start.
I'll go. I think when you're beginning something, and I speak from my perspective as a beginning teacher, you're questioning your sense of efficacy all the time. Am I doing the right things? Am I doing enough? Is this the field that I want to be in? And having someone who can help talk you through those things is really helpful. I think when you're doing something new, going back to the sense of well-being, the stress that you feel from that, or that stems from that, can really impact your sense of efficacy. And coming together, addressing different pieces of the puzzle helps make me feel like I'm doing all that I can. And as a result, I feel like an effective educator. And I think that not just new educators can benefit from this, because I think, speaking as someone who's only been teaching for 5 years, I know that no 2 years are the same. So having that opportunity to speak with someone about what you're going through, even if you're just trying to try something new, can be really helpful. I don't know if Teri has more that she wants to add, but she's seen me through these different stages. And sometimes the questions that I have, or the concerns that I have, stay the same, and sometimes they've changed. So I don't know, Teri, if you can help make what I'm trying to say make more sense.
You sparked a recollection of conversations that we've had about the idea that I think often when, we try things in our classrooms, like, we know that not everything is going to work the way that we had intended. And that's okay, because it means we're trying new things. And it's really about being able to articulate the why. Why did we do what we did? And what was our intention? And I thought this was going to happen. This is why I did it this way. This is what actually happened. This is what I can learn from it. But sometimes that can be really hard when we plan something out and it doesn't work the way we think that it was supposed to, or that we thought it was going to. And there's a tendency, maybe not for everybody, but for a lot of us, to discount the entire experience, that there was somehow no value or nothing good in it. And I think that having that opportunity to talk through it and sort of pull it apart a little bit and think, well, what parts of it actually did work? It may not all have worked, but what parts of it did work, and what parts of it maybe need to be a little bit different for next time. And being able to talk through those things. So I think it helps us, both of us, and for anybody to, having those opportunities to debrief in that way, to sort of say, okay, yeah, you know what? It wasn't all bad. There were some things that did work, or, and even on the odd occasion where, you know what, that was just not stellar, as a principal once said to me when she dropped into my classroom. I forgot about that. That was many, many years ago. I'm happy to say it was early days. But again, just as I digress, but as I listening to what I'm saying in this whole conversation and thinking about relationships and how important those relationships are, because that administrator who said that to me, she and I had a great relationship, and she walked in my room to observe, and I got really self-conscious, and so it really threw me off, and so it was not stellar. It happens.
Yeah.
But to be able to feel okay about that and not question our self-worth as a teacher because that one lesson didn't go quite the way that we had intended. It's really about what can I learn from it, and how can I use that information to move things forward. And there's always a new opportunity and a new day to try it out, try it a little bit differently, and see how it goes. And I think I'm just going to build on that notion of relationship. It's the reciprocal relationship that Hoda and I have. It's the relationships within the mentoree community. It's thinking about how I or we can help each other to think about building those relationships in our contexts, because something that I learned early on from when I was student teaching from one of my from the teacher whose room I was in, and she was an amazing teacher, and it was a grade 5 class, and she did a lesson with her students, and it really didn't work. I can't even remember the details of it, but what I remember is that she had this amazing relationship with her students, and she looked at them and she said, well, that didn't work. And they moved on, right? It was, to realize that it's not the end of the world, and, you're still a good teacher, and it's just experiences that we learn from.
But it reminds me too about mentorship being a part of storytelling. When you walk away and the story that you tell is insular and it's self-deprecating, that's what sits with you. But when you have the time to deconstruct it, and you have the time to crystallize what was valuable, what was the learning, and even if it's okay, next time I shoulda, woulda, coulda done this, that helps you retell the story in a much more positive and much more doable kind of way. It's that feeling that, you're not good enough, smart enough, and nobody likes you. And how do you leave it at that? So you're lucky in a sense that you have those chances to have those critical conversations that help you narrate the story of your teaching experiences in ways that are more positive and generate, real next steps for you. So if I said to you, mentorship matters, what comes to you that's different than what you shared today that helps you punctuate that statement?
That's a great question.
It just came to me, actually. Sorry, there was no prep for that at all, but just wondering.
No, I think what comes to mind is finding your people. And that's the advice that Teri gives me all the time, is find your people, because that will help alleviate some of the stress. You'll make those connections. Those pieces will start to fall into place. So for me, mentorship matters means finding someone that you can connect with. And it doesn't have to be that you connect on all things or you have a ton of things and a ton of similarities. But for me, having somebody who will hear you and will support you helps make what is or what can be a really difficult profession a lot easier. So for me, mentorship matters. It makes sense.
But you're right. You don't have to be bestie boos. You don't have to have go out dancing. You just have to have a mutual respect.
Yes.
And it have to be people that make you feel seen. And sometimes we're in situations like in host teaching, sometimes you're really lucky and you find a person that you can really connect with. And sometimes it's utilitarian, and that's okay too. Yeah. You always have a choice. And that's kind of what you're saying about mentorship, and something that we take pride in at the Mentoree is giving people choice and voice in how they learn and with whom they learn. So I appreciate that so much. I'm glad it matters to you. What about you, Teri?
Well, naturally, I agree with everything Hoda said. And I just was going to add to it, like thinking about mentorship matters. There's the relationship component, and then there's the learning component. I mean, and I think that those are very tightly interwoven. Having said that, I think it's about maintaining a stance of curiosity and learning, and that, you know, the perspective of, you know, it doesn't matter how much experience I have, there's still always more to learn and more to know. And, you know, the world around us changes. And so we need to think about, how does education need to change, and how do I need to change? What do I need to be aware of? And I think, you know, that mentorship mindset is, I'm always a learner. And that, you know, ties in so nicely to the reciprocal nature of mentorship that we believe so much in at the Mentoree, because we do learn from each other. And it's not about specific content. It might be, but it's also about just bringing different people together with different backgrounds, different lived experiences, to talk about those things. And then the learning is a natural out. That's not the right word, but
no, that sounds exactly.
outcome is not the word I was going with. Outcome makes much more sense. Yes, let's go with that. So the learning is a natural outcome of just coming together and having those kinds of learning conversations. And, you know, through the building of those relationships, and then thinking about some of the, you know, equity learning that Hoda and I have engaged in together, that we have built a relationship where we can really openly and honestly talk about some of the things that can be hard to talk about. And, you know, having a relationship that has continued for as long as it has, and hopefully will continue for the foreseeable future. I mean, it's been amazing for me to be able to be in this relationship and watch Hoda's growth and change, and, you know, as she goes through different experiences, and thinking about, I mean, it's really, I know, you know, we talk about mentorship at any and every stage of our careers, but I think a lot about, you know, what it's like to be a new educator in the last few years, and, you know, starting your teaching career during COVID. And that's, you know, new experiences. I didn't have, you know, none of us have that experience to say, oh, well, when I did that, when I taught through a
There's no schema for that in any way. No.
Right. So it's just an opportunity for us to sort of figure it out together. It's about having a thought partner, you know, so whatever is, you know, the topic is, it's like, okay, let's jump in this together. I have a bit of a, you know, I hate to say it at this point, but a historical perspective on certain questions that she, you know, Hoda might have, like, this is, you know, what's happening today, right now, in education related to this topic. And I can put a bit of a historical lens on it. And Hoda has the most current information. And we kind of, you know, put all those pieces together and see what we can figure out. So I think that, yeah, the lifelong learning that we so often say or, you know, give lip service to, but we really mean it. It's really about having that mindset of, there's always something I can learn, and from everybody, you know, from all the people with whom we interact. And again, going back to that idea of being part of a community. So yes, it's a mentorship relationship between the two of us, but then together we can engage in learning with other people in other ways. And we've done lots of different things together. And so sometimes we'll tap into other opportunities for professional learning in other places that we will do together. And then we have the opportunity to come together and talk about it after the fact. So it's been really just amazing. So I think mentorship matters. I think it helps us to, you know, all the pieces that we talk about all fit together. It helps support our well-being because we know we have someone to talk to, someone who gets us. And, you know, it helps us with our professional learning, and all of those pieces together lead to that sense of efficacy that, yes, I can do this and I can make a difference. And I have the confidence in my ability to make a difference for students, because that's ultimately what it's all about.
It really is, but we can't do that unless we take care of ourselves. And
Absolutely.
there's so much more to ourselves than just the professional learning part. So I'm so glad that you illustrated how it benefited you. As we say goodbye, is there anything else you want to share about your mentorship story?
I would just encourage everyone to consider something like this. I know for different people join for different reasons. People might be looking or entering at different career points, but I think it's so valuable to have somebody who can help you reach your goals, whatever they may be.
Thank you, Hoda. Teri?
That's so beautiful. I was just going to share a story, but it's, I'm just thinking about, you know, all the time that Hoda and I have spent together over the last few years. And, you know, that's a beautiful part of mentorship through the mentoree, is that we have that option. It may not be what's suitable for everybody, and that's okay too, but having that option to stay together and work through, you know, the ups and downs of the different experiences that we have in education, separately and together. And it's really quite lovely. And I was just saying at the beginning how Hoda and I met in person for the first time this past summer. We actually had the opportunity to present together at a conference, which was pretty amazing. And when we first encountered each other, I felt like there should be, you know, news crews there, news cameras. It felt like so monumental for us, and there was no one around. But it was just amazing to get to finally meet in person and connect. And I'm just really grateful for this relationship. I've gotten so much more out of it than I ever could have anticipated. I encourage anyone who's even, you know, remotely considering it to jump right in. And, you know, mentorship through the mentoree is about the one-to-one relationship, but there's also a whole community to support you.
And I'll just add, I think this mentorship relationship and the ones that stem from the mentoree, I don't know that anybody would regret trying this, because there's so much that you can gain from it and there's nothing to lose.
That's awesome. And not everybody has the longitudinal relationship that you guys have. Some people do it for a few months when they're in a new role. Some people do it to learn one specific skill, but there is no shelf life. And I can't wait to see how you continue to evolve. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I'm just going to wrap up. So thank you guys again for being here. What an incredible time to capture a mentorship story. And there are many mentorship stories. We have one-to-one mentors and mentees in the community waiting to connect, eagerly anticipating the building of these relationships that take time, but really help you value your time, and they're on your time and on your side. I hope that you check out what we do. I hope you consider joining the community, listen to on-ed mentors, come to a conversation to build capacity, experience an impact, or see a motivators event. I want to thank you guys for listening to this mentorship story. I hope to be back soon. Have a lovely day.